Hi, and welcome to the WEDI presentation on the Designated Standards Maintenance Organization. My name is Deborah Strickland, and I am a member of the National Council Committee on Vital and Health Statistics, as well as a member of WEDI and co-chair of the Payment Work Group. Today, I'd like to talk to you about the Designated Standard Maintenance Organization. So we're going to perform a high-level overview of what the organization is and what it is tasked with by the Secretary of HHS. So the term secretary in this presentation refers to the Secretary of Health and Human Services. The Act is the HIPAA regulations. The Dsmo is a designated standard maintenance organization and is made up of Dsmos that are named by the Secretary. Dsmo is sort of an informal name, but that's what people call it because it's made up of the Dsmos. And HIPAA is the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. The CFR is the Code of Federal Regulations, and SSO is the standard setting organization accredited by the American National Standards Institute. SDO is the Standard Development Organization. And now we'll proceed with the presentation. So in Section 1172C3 of the final rule, it requires that there's consultation prior to the adoption of a standard with the following entities, and that is the National Uniform Billing Committee, the National Uniform Claim Committee, and the Dental Content Committee, which is the part of the AMA, and the Work Group for Electronic Data Interchange. The federal regulation allows the Secretary to designate those organizations that agree to maintain standards. And this is the announcement that the Dsmos have been selected. The Dsmos are organizations that make up a steering committee called the Dsmo. And they were named in August of 2000, and this was effective October of 2000. Note, also during this announcement, the Secretary established criteria for the process to be used in the maintenance of these transactions, and we'll talk about that a little later. So these are the Data Content Committee and standard setting organizations that agreed to maintain the standards and whom the Secretary has selected as the Dsmos. So as you can see, the Dsmo is made up of many Dsmos. That's HL7, X12, NUBC, NUCC, AMA, and NCPDP. So in order to understand what the current Dsmo does, it's imperative that we understand what their role is. And that role is to maintain standards adopted under Subchapter 45 CSR and to receive and process requests for adopting new standard or modifying an adopted standard. So these are the only functions that were given to the Dsmo, and the Dsmos cannot change the functions that they perform. This is only done via regulation. And only the Secretary can add organizations to act as Dsmos, and that also would have to be done via regulation. So as I mentioned, so there's a criteria for the process for modifying an adopted standard. So the Secretary did not tell the Dsmos how and what tasks to perform, but the Secretary did set up a high-level process to follow, and they are open public access, coordination with other Dsmos, an appeal process for each of the following if dissatisfied with the decision on a request, the requester of the proposed modification, or a Dsmo that participated in the review and analysis of the request for the proposed modification or proposed new standard. Also, an expedited process to address content needs identified within the industry, and also submission of the recommendation to the National Committee on Vital and Health Statistics. Since the regulations do not describe how and exactly what these organizations will do, These organizations came together to create a memorandum of understanding. I wanted to highlight the statement of cooperation because it speaks to the spirit by which these parties entered into this arrangement. To achieve the goals of administrative simplification requires the process of cooperation and coordination among a variety of organizations involved in the maintenance of the standards to foster the administrative simplification. The signatories of this memorandum of understanding agree the following framework of cooperation with each other and HHS. These entities committed resources, time, and energy to this process, and they should be commended for their efforts. The Dsmo also created a steering committee within which each signatory will have a representative. Each organization will have one vote. HHS is a signatory, but a non-voting signatory, and acts as a liaison. The steering committee will meet monthly. And the role of this steering committee is for general oversight, conducting the appeals, and assessing the effectiveness of the MOU and the processes it puts in place. So here's the Dsmo process at a high level. So the request will come in through the Dsmo if submitted directly through the Dsmo site. They're received and processed, reviewed among the Dsmos, and sent to the appropriate SDO. If they are approved through the Standard Development Organization, they're reviewed and incorporated into a standard transaction, then the standard is ready to go back to the Dsmo and is presented to NCVHS. And NCVHS will hold a hearing and determine if they want to recommend that new standard to the Secretary. And if they do this recommendation in the form of a letter to the Secretary of Health and Human Services. To align with the process as its secretary deemed appropriate, the MOU has guiding principles, and they are allow for open and public access, provide for timely review, evaluate the impact of each change request, and maintain national perspective and conform to law. Also within the MOU, they created what is called the request management process. This is in Annex 1 of the MOU. And that is a website to collect the change requests, review of the completeness of the requests and determine which organization will review it and provide business analysis and recommendations, informal consensus among the active participants, provide a formal appeal process, and allow for SDO development, forward the recommendations to NCVHS, and then finally HHS for final rulemaking. So now we have a slide where you can get more information about the Dsmo. So that's HIPAA-Dsmo.org. Here you can see all the different links to the Dsmos that participate, and also information and an overview of the change management process. You have the ability to register and submit changes and also search for changes via this website. So that concludes the high-level overview of the Dsmos and what they're tasked with. So now we're going to review the process for requesting a change to a standard development organization directly. Each entity has their own change request process, and that's what we're going to review at a high level. But before we do, let's take a look at all of the various things that happen in the maintenance of the standard process. Now, this is a rather busy slide, but it shows the whole process for maintaining standards and where the Dsmo fits in. So we have requests that can come in through the SDO or the code set owners. These can come through, but they must be coordinated with the Dsmo. The changes can also come directly into the Dsmo via their own website, and these would also be assigned to the SDO or DCC as appropriate, and then of course would be discussed among the Dsmo steering committee. Now you will note that the operating rules do not go through the Dsmo, they go directly to NCVHS, and then recommendations from NCVHS are sent to the Secretary of Health and Human Services. Now along this whole path, from time to time there are needs. And sometimes we have WEDI who helps out and has a policy advisory group that will meet to discuss various changes, and also will review potentially cost benefits or the proposed regulations that are moving forward. And they'll discuss those with the industry. So let's take a look at X12. The various ways that you could submit a request to X12 is to submit it via a new project proposal. You could do a data maintenance or code maintenance request. You can access the x12.org site, or you can go directly to the authoring group of the transaction that you want to request a change to. More indirect paths are a comment from an NPRM or an IFR, an IFC. Sometimes those the work groups might take into consideration that requires a change, so a change may be made from a comment. And also there is the request for interpretation portal that you'll find at x12.org. Now, requesting enhancements to NCPDP standards. So if you wanted a change or enhancement to an NCPDP publication, that's done via data element request form. And if you wanted a new project for NCPDP work, and this is done via a new project development form. And they can be found at these locations. Requesting enhancements to NUBC. The National Uniform Billing Committee holds meetings and conference calls throughout the year, and change requests to the UB04 or UB04 dataset can be submitted anytime. Here's the URL, and that will take you to a page where there's instructions for submitting those requests. So the NUCC maintains the following documents. And these documents are available on an NUCC website at nucc.org. And requests to updates to these documents should be sent to info@nucc.org. So that is the end of this presentation. We hope that this gave you a good overview of what the Dsmo is and how to request changes directly into the Dsmo and also into the individual standards development organizations. Thank you and have a great day.